Hey there, it's Spencer Hughes, and this is Hughes from the Heart, and this is a brand new, relatively brand new segment, only 5 episodes in, including this one, where we're talking with you folks out there in the Spencer Hughes audience, the Hughes from the Heart audience, Facebook friends, social media connections, all sorts of folks, and eventually I want to just invite people that I meet kind of in random places once we're allowed to go to random places again. And people I find interesting, fascinating, people who have something to say, and we all have something to say that's unique to us. We're all individuals, and we have something worthwhile to talk about, and we should be heard. So that's what this segment is all about, and it's called Everyday People, and it's episode 5, and we have on here a long-time connection of mine on social media. We've never met in person, as is the case with most of our guests, but I feel like I know them from all the years that they've been supporting the stuff I've been doing. Jig Patel is with us. His website is the Expo Experts. He's a professional speaker, a communication expert, and he is focused on advising businesses how to grow through effective messaging and marketing strategies. And you can find out all about what he does and how to reach out to him at the expoexperts.com, EXPOEXPERTS.com, Expo, the expoexperts.com. Jig, great having you on Hughes from the Heart and Everyday People, episode 5. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the program, Spencer. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And we connected back in 2007 or 8, we think, maybe.
Something like that, right? It was the early days of Facebook, right? Pretty much, like right around that time.
Well, right now we're kind of focusing on coronavirus because it's something we're all kind of having to deal with. I mean, our lives changed in one way or another. And when people say, like, I'm unaffected, I don't think that's particularly true because they're not really in a position where they should go and, you know, touch things and not wash their hands and things like that. So I think even when people say, it's largely unaffecting me, I don't think that that's entirely true. I think people are affected to one degree or another. Some people obviously more severe than others depending on where you are and your health conditions and things like that. But that's kind of the running theme of Everyday People for now. Eventually I want to be able to talk about movies or entertainment or all sorts of other fun stuff too. But tell us first, Jig, if you could, how this is affecting you. I know you're an entrepreneur. I know you have been working your own businesses for several years. So it may not have been a traditional employment situation to begin with. A lot of us that are trying to do the entrepreneurial thing don't necessarily fit into the mold of a 9-to-5 office, you know, cubicle and things like that. But how has this affected you, my friend?
As you can tell, you told the listeners my website, the Expo Experts, which I've joked is I specialize in the large public gatherings business. So, so yes, I've been affected. Yeah, I mean, and you're 100% spot on. Anybody that says they're not affected by it, it just can't be true. And I think that now more than ever, we have realized how connected we all are. So yes, even though I personally right now, I feel very healthy and I hope, knock on wood, I'm not carrying any virus right now. But you know what? I have my significant other, her mother, she's very ill. I'm not going near her right now, right? Yeah. We have to be smart. That's affecting my life. Right.
And we were talking about how a lot of your business is shaking hands and stuff and how you miss that. I mean, I miss giving people hugs. I miss shaking hands. I miss all these, you know, even fist bumps, you know, that's kind of the cool, what all the cool kids are doing is the fist bumps. We can't even do that now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and even that tiny little thing is actually a very huge thing. Human contact. I know we were talking offline a little bit about that. Human contact is very important. Shaking hands is important. Consider me an old school sales guy, right? So there was no internet when I started selling, you know, so it was very much face to face. You know, my entry level sales days was downtown Chicago, knocking on doors, going up the skyscrapers, meeting people, shaking hands. And to this day, across the country, and I'm involved in sales literally everywhere, I've had an opportunity for all these years to actually get down and meet with people, to shake hands with people, to do business with people face to face. The online relationships are great. That's how we stay in touch. We communicate via email. That stuff doesn't change so much. But the actual bonding, the actual human relationship can only go so far online or on the phone where that human contact still matters, especially from a sales professional perspective, because a lot of what we do as sales professionals, can we say the right things on the phone to close a deal? Yeah, we can. But how much more important is body language? Seeing how people are reacting to what you're saying. Are they really understanding what I'm explaining to them? You can see that in their eyes. You can see that in the way people carry themselves. That's a lot of the stuff that you miss out on when you're trying to do a sale over the phone. Does it mean you don't do it? No. Right? Going back to what you were saying, do we have to adjust? 100%. We have to adjust.
I started a car sales job last Monday. We're producing this on a Wednesday. I'm losing track of the days. I think it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, April 1st as we produce this. Last Monday, I think that would have been the 23rd, started a new car sales job. Wednesday, we were laid off, and we're being told we're going to be brought back in a few weeks as soon as Governor Inslee declares us, essential again, I guess, and we can go back to work. But even then, we were doing test drives, right? The traditional thing salesmen do is take you on a test drive. We couldn't even do that. We were taking precautions to have people sign a waiver and give us their insurance papers, and then they would take the car, and we'd hope they'd come back with the car, I guess. But even that's very strange to think that a salesman wouldn't be with the person doing a test drive of a car. I mean, a month ago, none of this seemed like it could ever happen.
Right. Nobody anticipated this, and you know what? Let's face it. We live in a generation where we have gotten very, very comfortable. We've gotten comfortable with how easy access just about anything we need is. And now all of a sudden we're noticing that we're having to change. And that phrase comes up, and it's come up in our conversations, which is the new norm, right? Well, what is that new norm, and how can we prepare ourselves for it? And I think that's an important conversation to have, because just as 9/11, we were not prepared for 9/11, but it did create a new norm that we've all become used to. It changed our entire security protocol at the airports, right? And that's just one of many things that became part of our new norm. So it would be rather naive to think that what we're experiencing now is not going to create some sort of a new norm. And with that, it's the forward thinkers, the ones that are trying, experimenting, doing whatever it is, trying to create in this new norm and trying to create whatever that new norm is. Because guess what? Business is going to still have to happen. Podcasts are still going to have to happen. These things are still going to have to happen. How they happen is probably going to change.
I know a lot of people in the restaurant business, and they are really hurting right now. Many of them maybe never had things like curbside delivery or curbside, bringing out to the car or delivering. And now they're adapting all sorts of ways. We have locally, at least in the state of Washington where I live, where it's legal through some loophole or something in these new rules, this new norm we're trying to learn and adapt to, that they can even deliver alcohol. I mean, they can deliver, like Mexican restaurants can deliver like margaritas or something. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing, but it's new meaning for DoorDash, I guess, huh? But everything's changing. Everything, the way we do things. I'm doing the radio show from home. I have that capability, thank God, with technology. There's just so many things that we took for granted, I think, that are changing right before our eyes, and very quickly. This was not something that we had months and months to adapt to. For a lot of us, it happened overnight.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because I was actually in the middle of, this is one of my busiest seasons right now. Like generally, without getting into too much detail, first quarter and third quarter are very busy for me. And that's where a bulk of my business actually happens. So this last month, things started slowing down, and we're wondering like, okay, well, we're in the Expo business, we're in the show. So there was we were doing a series of home shows, some of the biggest home shows in the country. And these draw tens of thousands of people to these programs. Well, the traffic already was going down. And then midway through one of our major events, it was shut down, and we're sitting there changing our flights and flying home. And that literally, for the people that were on, people like myself, I mean, it cost us just the last few weeks for the people that I work with, it probably cost us $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 straight out of pocket revenue for us, like out of our personal pockets. So yeah, it happened fast and quickly. You have to adjust. And I would say more importantly is you got to keep a clear head, because when these things things happen, it's very, very easy to get caught up in the woe is me, to get caught up in the now what, and kind of go into panic or fear, or
it's true.
which
Panic
is natural.
A terrible thing. Fear
it's
is such a horrible thing. I never realized, Jig. I try not to be a fearful person, but it is so hard with this going on. I feel a little more confident as the days go on that this will wrap up sooner than later. I personally am not deep. There's something. I'm not a denier. I'm not saying it's a hoax. I don't believe we're going to see 200,000 or 300,000 dead Americans. I don't. Nothing that I am seeing from the current number. In many places, the numbers are going down already. I'm not seeing 200,000 or 300,000 or 400,000 dead Americans. I'm just not. And my mind cannot go to that place right now. And I know that if I do, right, it's going to cripple me. It's going to, if I think the world's ending, the sky's falling, everyone's going to be dead around me, there's no motivation to like try to do anything. I mean, that's when people crawl under a rock and they just kind of fester and wither away.
Yeah, and and that's the thing, is it's very easy to get caught up in that, right? And and it's funny. I mean, and I don't want to take this conversation political, but just to throw it out there, look at when Trump won, right? I mean, how many people thought the world was going to end when Trump won? Well, guess what? The world was still going on. But you know what? A lot of people thought the world was going to end when Obama won, and it didn't end then either. The fact of the matter is that when we get hit by crisis, we have to, as quickly as possible, get through the fear, right? Get through it, because that's natural, right? But then say, okay, what is the next step? How do I, because the fact of the matter is, no matter what happens tonight, I'm going to close my eyes, and tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and it's going to be a new day. So how am I going to win the day? Because right now, all I got to do is win the day and make sure that I'm setting myself up for success for tomorrow. And it comes down to that. And maybe those first couple days is, how do I win the day? Well, it's just getting my head on straight. It could be as simple as that. But as long as we're making progress, we're moving in the right direction, and looking at, in my opinion, looking at the bigger picture, not looking at what problems am I currently dealing with, but what problems are we seeing as a whole, as a society? Because wherever there's a problem, there's a solution. And then the next question is how can I be a part of the solution? And we all do it in our own ways. I mean, I think you're doing great things. You're reaching out. You're trying to have conversations to help people through, this conversation that we're having hopefully will be helpful for many others. I'm doing a lot of small business consulting right now, helping in our local community in the suburb where I'm at, working with the downtown, working with the city council, helping the small businesses, the restaurants, the bars, showing them how they can access some of the emergency funds that are available. There's a lot of things, and our governments, like them or not, are trying to help us, but we do have to seek out these resources, right? And we have to know that they're there, and we have to keep a clean head. I talk to a lot of small businesses that they're struggling, they're panicking. I don't know, I got to cut staff. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make my rent. These are common problems that many thousands, tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of small businesses are going through right now, right? But there has to be that adjustment. There has to be the looking at the big picture. How can I be a part of the solution? And some are doing great things. Some are, and you see it around you. You see who's winning. You see who's taking advantage of it. You see who's changed their messaging, their marketing. There's a lot of things that can be done, and and that's something maybe we could also talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Todd Stottlemyre he's the one I was talking with you about off the air earlier. He's a 3-time World Series champion, best-selling author too, and he's turned into kind of a public figure for motivation and inspiration and stuff. And he was saying how, I'm trying to find the quote. Yeah, here it is. It's him in an Instagram post a few days ago. He said, "The grind is on. Working from home will not stop us. Here is my mantra for all of our companies. Don't think survival. Think how we can get better every day. The opportunities will show their face if we keep the right perspective and focus. Good luck and stay safe." And I thought that was so inspiring that so many of us are in survival mode. I got to get that part of that reptilian fear out of my head that, oh my God, my kids aren't going to eat dinner tonight, because of course they're going to eat dinner tonight. I mean, whatever I have to do to make that happen, I'm going to make that happen, right? But when we go into survival mode, we start panicking, we start getting fearful, and we can't create anything worth a damn, Jig. You know that from the point of fear, from that vantage point. We can't create anything. Nothing worth a damn in this whole world has ever been created from that place.
It's, I love that you bring up the reptilian mode, because that's true, right? That is the core mentality. Our reptilian brain is where our fight or flight comes from. That's where our fear comes from. And that is a tool, right? It's there for our survival, and that's why we have it. Problem is that usually the things right now, when our reptilian instinct kicks in, the reptilian instinct says this is going to kill me, right? This is your old instinct from caveman days. If you're about to go eat some berries off a bush and you hear some rustling behind that bush, chances are it's going to be some kind of a wild cat that's going to eat you. Right now, that same fear that we're getting it's not about life and death, but our instinct tells us it is. And that's why we freeze and we panic. The reality is what could die? Well, my business could die, I suppose. Yes. I could lose my house, I suppose. Yes. So do we need this? When I say use it as a tool, yeah, we need it. We do need to assess our current situation. And I think any of us would be lying if when our shutdown started from state to state, if we didn't sit down and look at our numbers, look at our finances and say, okay, how much can I live on? What are my expenses? How does my budget look? What can I anticipate for income over the next 30, 60, 90, whatever it is, right? These are things we need to do because our reptilian brain kicked in, and it makes sense to do that. And that's when you have to decide, I'm here for the fight, right? So now if I'm going to fight, because obviously I can't give up because I still have to survive. I still got to feed my family. I still got to pay my bills. That means that flight is not an option. Right? So now we know we have
exactly.
So now we've accepted that. So the question is, okay, how do I fight?
Right.
Okay. Well, what are we fighting? Well, right now, let's put in a very general, what are the big things that we're fighting? Are we fighting isolation and loneliness? I would say that's probably one thing from a very natural perspective. We're fighting whatever financial challenges that there might be. I think those are a couple of probably the big ones.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, and the other thing we always have to think about is like just general health, right? We got to make sure that we're staying healthy. I think one other thing that we do often that we fight and it can hold us back is just the overload of information that we're getting. We're bombarded by information more than we ever were. You go not even 100 years ago to the Spanish flu, go 20 years ago to any major crises that we may or may not have had. We didn't have the internet the way we do now. We didn't have the information overload that we do now. We didn't have the overload of opinions that we do now.
Here's an example, Jig, that really bugs me, and I don't like getting political, and this is not a political comment at all. It's just from almost 30 years in the media. I know how the media machine works, unfortunately. I've seen it firsthand, and it disillusioned me when I was 20 years old and I first got into it because I saw it pretty early on. The media machine feeds on ratings, and that's okay. I feed on, listeners too and ratings too. I think we all have one form or another of ratings. We have to have them. But unfortunately, the media could put up Girl Scouts selling Girl Scout cookies 24/7 on a channel, and it would get less than a 1 share because it's great. The Girl Scouts are wonderful. The cookies are great. They're addictive. We love them. We're not going to sit there watching Girl Scouts and unicorns and rainbows 24 hours a day. For some reason, maybe it's the reptilian part of our brain. It's wired to be scared. It's wired to be worried. It's wired to be always, on the run. And what the media is doing right now is atrocious, in my opinion, overall. I retweeted a story earlier of major media outlet. They say erroneously, they said it was an honest mistake. We're showing footage of an overcrowded hospital, the doctors and nurses all stepping all over each other, bodies in the hallways, and they said it was a New York City hospital, and it turned out to be an Italian hospital. I want them, I demand, they do more than just say it was a careless mistake. I demand that they get out and tell the countless hundreds of millions of people that they scared to death that was a New York City hospital I believe they knew deep down, and they're a bunch of snakes that need ratings more than anything at a time when the media is losing ratings. I cannot stand that. And this media overload is already detrimental to our psyche, but when it's misinformation and downright lying, it's even worse. It's changing the entire mindset of a people. I mean,
fear and anger sells, right? Like what you said, nobody cares about the Girl Scout cookies. Fear and anger sells that when people are angry or they're scared, you have their attention, you have them riled up, you have them, negativity sells, right? I mean, look at a product with a bad review, people are quick to give. A good review, people are not quick to give, right?
It's true. We're so prone to complaining. We're so prone to bitching and moaning. Yep.
You have excellent service at a restaurant, maybe you leave a good tip. You have bad service at a restaurant, you don't just leave a bad tip. You have to talk to the manager about it, and you got to complain. And I'm talking generally, obviously, but we're quick to complain, right? And that's part of our inherent, the way that we are, and that what the media knows. And like you're saying, they can give you a false headline because that captures all the attention, gets people mad, gets people talking about it. 3 days later, at the bottom with an asterisk, I can go ahead and retract what I said 3 days ago in my article, right? But who's going to see that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you can always
they're never made to.
Oops, my bad.
I just want the news media to be accountable for all this scaremongering and fearmongering. I remember researching when I was growing up, like what people may have been afraid of. They were telling people when I was a kid that oil would be wiped off the face of the earth by the 1970s. By the late 70s, there wouldn't be a drop of petroleum on this planet. We have undiscovered resources under our feet, and it was a lie then, it's a lie now, and people believed it, but nobody was ever made to answer for it. They never went to those pinhead professors back in the 80s and said, hey, how come it's 1989 and we still have oil? How come it's 2015 and we still have oil? You were quoted as saying in 1970 we were running out of oil. It wasn't true. When I was a kid, Jig, and you and I, we were talking, you look much more youthful than I do, by the way, but we're about the same age. You look 20 years younger than me. But they were, when we were kids, it was the next ice age. You can, if people don't believe it, they can research the covers of Time magazine, Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report. They were all saying we were headed to an ice age in the 1970s and into the 80s. We were all fearful we were global cooling. And then all of a sudden, nobody was made to answer. Then it was global warming. Now they won't even call it that. Now they're calling it climate change, which I guess covers them both ways, because now they say if it's very cold, it's the same thing. If it's very hot somewhere, it's the same thing. So now they're conveniently calling it climate change.
And you know what? And you also look back at let's look at the history of our country, right? Let's just take it back to the beginning. How many times have we gone through and had to rally as a nation? You know, you brought up World War II earlier. That was a time that right now, you know, you talk about we're all snowflakes. I don't think any of us could have lived the way they did in World War II days, any of us that is alive today, because we've been so coddled, cushioned, and we've done it to ourselves. And people might argue with me and say that I'm wrong about this. But right now, if we look back not very long ago, 1941 or whatever, right? When we were dealing with the 1940s with the World War II America, that rally of Americans compared to right now, completely different time. And we were so comfortable, we didn't think that we would ever have to rally as a nation. We just thought it was going to be what it was. And we were comfortable and everything's great. And it turns out now something like this happens, and the vast majority of us really are snowflakes, because this is nothing compared to what our forefathers went through.
Well, what's interesting too is, I mean, the whole toilet paper thing, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, I go to the supermarket, there's 18,000 cans of chicken soup. I mean, that should be what people are buying up, the chicken soup and the bottled waters maybe, or something. It doesn't make it, whether they're going to wipe their butts like into perpetuity through a crisis. I mean, I have, right now I have 6 people in our family because 2 of my kids are in California. They didn't move up with us at this point, but we don't even go through that much toilet paper. I still cannot get to a store unless I get there at 6 in the freaking morning and buy a roll of toilet paper.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And you know, so this is a great, okay, so here's a perfect case study, right? If you look at the big picture, right? Again, try to step outside and look at the big picture. If you look at the herd mentality, so did the herd go and hoard all the toilet paper? Yes. However, when we talk about being creative and seeing the opportunity, right? There were forward thinkers who said, look, toilet paper shortage, everyone's going after toilet paper. And within a day, some of the smart advertisers were advertising bidets, right? They got ahead of it because they found the problem, they created a solution, and then they started selling that solution. And right now, if I'm scrolling through my Facebook feed, I actually see ads for bidets, right? So that is creativity. That's getting ahead of it. That's looking at the problem objectively and then finding the opportunity within it. So yes, there are people out there right now that are making money selling bidets. There were people out there that were often in a very greedy way and not in an ethical way, saw an opportunity in masks and gloves, and they started hoarding those, right? Because they thought that they could just start selling those, or hand sanitizer or whatever else, right? So some people go the greed route. Well, they think they're forward thinking, but they're still part of the herd. Someone who's forward thinking, or a business that's forward thinking, is actually, and we've seen great examples of it, right? We've seen so many companies that have stepped up and said, we're going to help, and companies that have stepped up and they're taking care of their employees. And we don't need to go down a list of them, but there's tons of those, right? And at the same time, there are tons of companies that are treating their employees like crap. Well, guess what? This is actually something that people are going to remember in that new tomorrow, and this is where the companies that are forward thinking, the ones that are really taking care of their people, the ones that are doing great things for the community at large in which they're based, that's going to make a difference. And those companies are going to come out on top. Now, I'm a small business. I don't have 1,000 employees, but can I still make as big of an impact on a smaller level? Yes, absolutely. How can I be a forward thinker? And when I say I'm kind of thinking about every entrepreneur, everybody, your listeners, right? How can I worry right now, not so much about the macro economy, forget about the macro, what's the micro? How do I make my thumbprint now? How do I look at the current situation and address it in a positive way now? And not to be cliche, Gandhi, right? Be the change you wish to see in the world. It's the same concept, right? Let's be the change. So what is the change I can make in business? I've had to adjust my messaging. I'm selling a health product. Well, now we have a health crisis going on. Well, I'm still trying to sell it, and a lot of people are tight on money. So my messaging has turned away from the money part of it, and it's re-messaged around the health part of it, right? So I've had to turn things around a little bit to create the message because there's still a need for the product, but now I have to overcome a different objection, and that is that, oh man, I lost my job, or I don't know when my next paycheck is coming in, I've been furloughed, whatever. Those are going to be common things that as business owners, we have to expect. I was talking to one of the partners in my company about in our fall season, which is our next busy season. I think I mentioned it earlier in the program. During that season, we have to right now, assuming that business is going to be up and running and everything when we hit the road again in end of July, August timeframe, when we start doing that, are we going to be expecting that our sales are going to be the same, or are we expecting that if we do the same things that our sales are going to be down? We have to be prepared for down sales if we don't change anything that we're doing, because we know that a certain percentage of our target audience has lost their jobs. They're in a different financial situation. Whatever it is, it's not going to be better unless we change our messaging, unless we change the way that we sell the product, unless we change how we finance the product. There's a million different ways that we can go around it, but are we being solution oriented? And that goes back to in our own lives. How can I be solution oriented in my own home? How can I be solution oriented in my own parenting skills? For parents, it's difficult right now. Kids are at home. We're busy trying to figure out how we're going to run our own business and our own work. And now we got kids to worry about that have to get educated. That's a new challenge. Well, how can I create a solution around that? How can I help my child grow through this the way we all are? Because this is a great time for everybody to learn. I think this is a huge learning experience. And yes, it's going to chap our hides a little bit. It's going to hurt a little bit. There's no lying, like you said at the very beginning. If you're not affected, you're lying.
Yeah, I talk to people, not so much on this segment, but just I talk to people and they're saying, oh, it doesn't affect me at all, or I like the isolation. I stay at home anyway. I see a lot of things on social media, people saying that. But the bottom line is, yeah, they may be a homebody, but if they wanted to go to their grandson's bar mitzvah right now, they can't. The Bay Area right now is under extreme lockdown. I just read that they got it even stricter. You can't go to parks. You can't go golfing. You can't. Funerals have to have only 10 people. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, burying a loved one in the San Francisco Bay Area right now, someone maybe who is loved by 10,000 people and might have had 1,000 showing up at their funeral, and you're saying we have to kind of draw straws here to see who could go to Grandpa's funeral? I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's affecting everything.
And that's a great example, because that's one of those things, like, if we had to create buckets of things in our life, there's the things I can control and the things I can't control, right? The things I can't control, I can't invest my energy on, right? So if Grandpa dies and we're going to have, normally there would have been 1,000 people show up at that funeral, and now I can only do 10. Well, guess what? First of all, Grandpa died. Grandpa doesn't care. That's the first thing. That's the very first thing that we got.
Grandpa's laughing from somewhere, some other place. He's laughing at how they're going to divvy up the tickets.
Right. So Grandpa's laughing about that. So Grandpa doesn't care. That's the first thing. And And the next thing is we can't change how many people can attend that funeral, or if we could even do a proper funeral, or are we going to have to change our whole procedure? Are we going to have to go the cremation route, or are we going to, whatever it is, we're going to have to deal with it. But those are things that are not in our control. So what is in my control? Do I have the ability to maybe do a Facebook Live and do a tribute to my grandfather? Do I have the ability to create something from all of his loved ones where we all write a note and maybe create something? Do I have the ability to 6 months from now plan a big celebration of Grandpa's life? I'm rattling these things out
sure.
as we're talking. But these are all different ways that we can turn the problem into a solution. And it could turn out beautifully. I'm seeing, to whatever degree people are able to do it. Little kids, they're trying to do birthday parties for little kids, and they're having like the cars drive by all their parents, the kids, in the neighborhoods. You're seeing that happen. People are getting creative. They're trying to still stay enriched. People are still trying to grow. And I think that's a whole topic we didn't get into yet about growth, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, let's talk about growth, because it's so easy, again, to go to that dark place, Jig, where everyone's thinking of everything retracting, loss of business, loss of property, loss of income, loss of opportunity. But there's also a tremendous opportunity here for growth with the proper mindset. Let's focus on that.
I like this because when you're talking about growth, usually we look at growth as, just generally speaking, personal growth, bettering ourselves, or growing physically our business empire or our revenue or whatever. But when you look at the actual, what is growth? It's a life force. And so if you think about one thing that all life shares in common, right, is how life works, and it all starts with water. So let's even start with something in a petri dish. You don't have to, the cell or the culture that's growing in a petri dish does not have to be told how to grow. It doesn't have anything within it that says, here's the way that I'm going to grow. It just grows, because growth is the life force. If you have your lawn that you don't cut, it's going to continue to grow. And then there's going to be weeds that continue to grow. If you have a garden, we people will spend hours upon hours grooming their garden and making everything look all pretty. But the reality is that you don't even, and we'll put chemicals and we'll do this and we'll do that. But the reality is, go look at a forest. Who grew the forest? The forest just grew because it was a natural force. So what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is this. Right now, we're locked in our houses for the most part. People are going stir crazy. People are feeling a bit isolated. People oftentimes have feelings of loneliness. And it can cause a little bit of depression and loneliness, and it can cause anxiety. It can cause a lot of various emotional things can happen, right? But understand this. It's normal because we are also a life. As far as life is concerned, we are no different than that blade of grass. It is our inherent instinct, whether we like it or not, or acknowledge it or not, it is our nature to expand. So when you're sitting, again, you look at prisoners in jail. You look at people who are in nursing homes who are confined to that bed, or people that are in a hospital, or people who are on a quarantine. You hate being locked up because it is in your nature to expand. It is in your nature to interact with others. It is in your nature to grow. So right now, going back to our reptilian self, that's the part that hates the isolation. That's the part that hates the loneliness, because it's preventing us from growth and we feel confined. We're confined by the amount of relationships we can keep right now. We're confined by the number of people we can interact with. We're confined by how far we can go. All of these things currently are out of our control. We put it into that bucket. What is in our control? Well, I could get on Skype and do a hopefully productive call with Spencer Hughes. That's something I can do.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't we talk about, if you don't mind mentioning what you talked about, what you're doing? I thought it was very inspiring. Do you want to touch on that?
Yes. So like many others, I'm sure I have more downtime now than I did. Like I said, I was on the road. Everything came to a screeching halt. I'm home. Yes, I'm trying to conduct some business. Yes, I'm trying to, do some phone calls, send some emails, shoot some text, do what I could do to run my business. But I already know I have more time now to either burn through every episode of everything on Netflix. And you know what? Tiger King, really? I mean, yes, Tiger King had me roped in for a solid 3 episodes before I said, what am I watching? And I turned it off. But
I haven't gotten even that far, but
but and I get it. Look, we're at home and we have access to so many different forms of entertainment right now. I mean, hell, you can just keep your hand on your phone and just be scrolling social media all day if you wanted to. Is that helping me? Is that helping me grow? No, it's not. So what I decided to do, and for the last 20 or so years, I've been talking about doing it, and my excuse was always, I don't have time. Well, guess what? That excuse is out the window now. And this is, by the way, for all of your listeners, whatever it is in your life that up until now you have said, I don't have time, reassess that statement about not having time. Here's what I'm doing. And thanks for being inspired by it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
Spencer, but I said, you know what, right now, what is the opportunity? There's going to be an opportunity in real estate. There always has been. It goes up, it goes down, but I never got my license. I was teaching realtors, tens of thousands of realtors on branding, marketing, developing good systems, but I myself was not in the real estate industry. I was in the marketing and advertising industry. So now I'm taking the class. I went online, and it's online classes, right? It's online learning. So I just, I paid a few bucks, bought the course, and now I'm studying for my real estate license in my downtime so that when this thing does come out, I can go ahead, take the test, and utilize that license. Honestly, I don't know exactly how I'm going to utilize it, but I do know it's a hell of a tool to have.
That's awesome. That's great.
So that's what I'm going to do. That's one of the things I'm doing. I've also been doing some sales training. There's Grant Cardone. You're probably familiar with Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
I've done. You're in the car industry, right? So he's big in the car industry. Doing his videos, his online mastery course and all that, because now is a fantastic time for anybody who's got extra time to sharpen your axe. And right now I am trying to spend some of my time sharpening my own axe. And so that's how I'm trying to use my time productively as well, on top of the other adjustments that I've already mentioned.
Well, it's interesting. Good for you. What's interesting is I was working, Jig, 18, 19 hours a day. I was working very stupid, not very smart. And as I tell my wife all the time, and she agrees, it's not even the 18, 19-hour work days. It's not having anything to show for it. That's what hurts. I mean, if I'm working 18, 19 hours a day, but I can provide a multi-million-dollar existence for my family, then, it's a little more palatable than if you're, struggling all the time. But I always said to myself, if I could just pump more time into my podcast, I'll grow the podcast. But where am I going to find the time? Because I'm working 18, 19 hours a day. Be careful what you wish for. Because now I have more time on my hands than I've ever had. I'm home all day when I was never home before. Nobody ever saw me. I was kind of a ghost passing in the hallways. And now the podcast, lo and behold, is growing. I mean, isn't it crazy when you think about it that I have this time now? This is my passion, talking with people like you and fostering hope and consideration and kindness and love and joy and good vibrations, especially now more than ever, when everything people are getting from the media is the opposite. We're all going to die, and it's happening sooner than later. Maybe this is the catalyst that'll make that grow, is this downtime during what is considered a global catastrophe could end up being the catalyst for a lot of businesses that'll grow for years to come.
Absolutely. And you know what? When you talk about time and money, that is something that for our entire lives, we've always been trading back and forth. The two biggest commodities, especially in Western culture, are time and money, right? Money's, when you live in America, you need money. It's just how it is, right? If you want to live any kind of a halfway decent life, you're going to need some kind of money. And all of a sudden, it was like a screeching halt when all of a sudden now the money's not coming in for a lot of people, especially I know small businesses are struggling a lot as far as revenue. Like a small business, you don't just go and apply for unemployment. There's different ways around it. There's some help out there, obviously, but money is down. Time is up. It's usually the other way around. The money's coming in. I'm spending all my time making money, but I'm not really investing my time anywhere else. But now we've been gifted, and I really do believe we've been gifted with time. What are we doing with that gift? A lot of people are spending much more time working with their kids. I mean, time that usually the kids are in school. Now they get a chance to work with their kids, work on different projects, do fun stuff with them, with the younger ones and all that. Time with our family, time with our loved ones, time like I'm doing for education.
It's true. I mean, no better time to learn to cook, to learn an instrument, to play board games with the kids, to introduce them to a new interest, to Google something. One thing that's really cool, I have a VR that's a few years old. It's the Oculus Go, Jig, and it was the first standalone VR headset where you didn't have to tether it to, a $5,000 computer or something. So you could just take it literally on the go anywhere you want and just play VR. I'm having a damn good time on that thing, going to museums and going to different parts of the world, and it feels like you're there. And of course, obviously, it's not real life, but man, I bet
it's enriching.
Along with these Nintendo Switches selling off the shelves and off of Amazon shelves, I bet you these VR units are being sold too because they're so educational. You can play games, but it's a great opportunity to expand ourselves. I think it's so sad when people, my goal, Jig, is honestly, it's not to make $100 million, although if I do, I won't, send it back. But my goal is to be a better person tomorrow than I am today, to know something about this universe more next week than I did this week, to lose a little bit more weight next week than I weigh this week. If I'm constantly just stagnating, if I check in with myself in a month and I'm exactly where I was a month ago, I'm not growing. And people, it's so sad that, the whole saying, people are just kind of existing. They're not living. And so many of us are just kind of in this existence mode of out of necessity, just paying the bills and being at the grindstone and getting in the car and going to work. And what's sad is Joe Rogan says, and I'm going to give him credit for this one on his podcast. He says it a lot, is that we're so overworked and so overburdened and overstressed that the biggest thing we look forward to sometimes is just taking a poop so we could just relax.
Right.
We go to the bathroom. I know there's times when I'm at work where I just go to the bathroom and I'm not even going to the bathroom. I just sit there because I can get away from everything. And
right.
Now we have this time where we can kind of just take a deep breath, reset, reboot, and say, you know what, I'm gonna make soaps today with my kids. I've never made soap, but I've always wanted to. Or I'm gonna come up with a way that, I don't know, respirators don't have to take so damn long. I don't understand how we made, going back to the Greatest Generation, I don't know how this country once made bombers and aircraft carriers and a war machine that obliterated Adolf Hitler. And I keep reading stories that, we can't get enough ventilators made, we can't make enough masks. What happened to this country, Jig, that we went from producing bombers that were going on war missions over Europe and over the South Pacific, and we can't figure out how to provide masks to doctors? We have nurses that are using the same mask 12 hours a day because there's not enough masks, and yet this country somehow cranked out a war machine that defeated Imperial Japan? I mean, something's wrong here.
It's crazy. Yeah, you know what? It's funny. And like one of the jokes that we make is in sales is, this is our VP of sales prevention, right? And it's kind of like that's oftentimes what the bureaucracy does, right? They actually slow down the process when you have businesses that really are ready to manufacture and get, but it has to go through this process and we have this procurement process and blah, blah, blah. And one thing I will say, this administration has tried to cut a lot of that red tape. But going back to what you were saying before, even with the Joe Rogan, about how people kind of end up in autopilot and they just kind of go. One of the big things that I've said many times before, and I don't even know if it's my words or someone else's, but it's about living a life and striving to live a life by design instead of living a life by default. And usually when we're passive, we're living that life by default. We're going with the flow. We're taking it as it comes, and we're not, you know what? All we are is that little ripple of a wave in a big ocean that pops its head out for a blink of an eye and then it disappears. And that's our time on this planet. And we have to make an impact for that little second that we pop our head above that water. And what is that design? What is that thumbprint that we're going to make on the planet? How are we going to do that? I think we all need to individually just take ownership of that. I think as a whole, the vast majority of us knows that we are good people and we want to do good things in the world. Well, it's one thing to want to, but another thing to actually say, well, how am I going to make that happen? What impact can I make? And we do have to just kind of put ourselves above it, not above, apart from it, like to look at everything going on, look at it objectively. Whether it is everything that you're talking about right now, like why is it so hard to get these respirators out? Well, okay, let's figure that out. And there are people that are working on that right now.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I've been seeing stories, Jake, of us.
I have no fear. I have no fear that the United States will overcome. We will absolutely overcome, and I think we're going to come back roaring when we come out of this. I think our economy is going to explode. I really am that confident.
God, I really hope so. I feel it too. I really, really hope so for everyone's sake. We got to get back on track here. My biggest fear, Jig, is the economy's going to roar again, and then there'll be another virus, and then we're going to put everything to us. I mean, we can't. At some point, we have to reevaluate everything, and we have to ask ourselves: are we just going to be in perpetual lockdown? Because people are always going to get sick. There's always going to, and I don't mean to sound callous when I say this at all, but
it's a fact.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like when Governor Inslee here in Washington says we have to evaluate. It's not safe to open the businesses yet. What is considered safe? I mean, when nobody dies of this, I mean, at some point you can't guarantee that level of safety. You can't promise people aren't going to die crossing the street today. You can't promise people that.
Right.
We still sell cars.
Common sense.
I mean, they still sell cars, and we can't guarantee no one's going to die in a car wreck. We can't guarantee there won't be drunk drivers. We can't. At some point, we have to say we have to go out there. We have to go shopping. We're going to touch the shopping cart. We might touch our eyeball, and we can't shut everything down because people are still contagious. I mean, it's crazy to think that we'll be in lockdown for 100 years.
Yeah, that's where the whole common sense piece comes in, and that new norm that we talk about, because there is going to be a new norm and there is going to be another virus. And I think one thing that our eyes have been wokened to, that we're woke, you know what I mean?
It's that new expression all the kids are saying, yeah.
I'm trying to sound as cool as the kids. It's just not happening. But what we do know is that we are not invincible. We could be the most powerful nation in the world with the best battleships and the best aircraft carriers and the best planes. But guess what? A virus is a virus, and it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again, whether it's man-made or whether it's natural or whatever it is. Viruses have been around. They always come. And now we're finally woke to the fact that it is going to happen again, and we can't deny it. So are we going to be better prepared? I do believe we will. Are we going to have the stockpiles for next time around? I do believe we will. And are we going to have our global partners? I do believe we will in a situation like this, because there's been the line has kind of been drawn in the sand in a lot of different categories. One of them being a lot of what we talked about before, about there's the scarcity mentality, there's the abundance mentality. That line is drawn. There are the people that are going to capitalize in a good way off of this and people that are going to capitalize in a bad way off of this. The line is drawn.
I want to touch base with you again in other segments of this down the road, and we could talk about all sorts of cool things, especially when we get on the other side of this thing.
It's been a blast, man. I love talking to you. It's great.
You are a blast. You are very passionate, and I want people to get in touch with you. So let's go over it again. It's theexpoexperts.com, right? That's your website, and that's your hub on the internet where they can talk to you and contact you.
Right there. If I could throw out one quick thing.
Sure.
And obviously it would be limited, but one thing I have been doing is I've been just doing free short coaching calls for our local businesses over here, just giving them a couple of ideas, a couple of pointers, what they can tweak. If you have any small business owners that want to reach out to me, I'm happy to have a conversation with them. No strings attached. We can talk some ideas. If there's any ideas I could throw out that might help anybody right now, I'm happy to do that.
Jake, thanks so much, my friend. The expoexperts.com is the website. Let's talk again, and thanks for being on Hughes from the Heart and Everyday People, Episode 5.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Spencer.